Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Magda. I teach military English, and this is my second webinar. If you haven't seen the first one was about last-minute tips before STANAG 6001 exam. And this one is going to be slightly different because I'm going to focus on more long-term strategies. I want to show you some tools that you can use to learn vocabulary more effectively. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today, and the topics that we're going to focus on in particular will be activating your passive vocabulary. I want to explain the concept of what is passive and active vocabulary in English, learning new vocabulary in context, and we're going to talk about how to create this context if you don't live in an English-speaking country. Number 3, creating mind maps. I want to show you some examples of mind maps that I created for my students, and they are connected to the topics for STANAG exam. Number 4, idioms versus collocations. So I want to talk about this obsession that a lot of students have about learning idioms. And I want to share some personal story about it too, so stay tuned. It's a bit embarrassing, this story, and the importance of learning collocations. And last but not least, about military vocabulary. So let's get it started. The first thing that I want to talk about is what is active and passive vocabulary. So I want you to think about your vocabulary as two circles. The pink one, the one that you can see in the screen, is your passive vocabulary. And the green one, or blue, I would say green, the green one is your active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary is all of the words that you know and you recognize when you see them, when you read an article or when you hear them in a song or in a podcast, you recognize those words, but you never use them because the words that you use in your everyday conversations are the ones that are in your active vocabulary, the green circle. So as you can see, there is quite a big difference in the size of those two circles because the words that we actually use and the words that we know, well, you can see it yourself. And the mistake that many people make is focusing on making the pink circle bigger instead of working on expanding the green circle. I've got a slide about it. Yeah, that's the mistake. Because we want to know more words. We want to learn more vocabulary. We create longer lists because we think that our English is not good enough because we don't know enough vocabulary. And that's wrong. Our English might sound poor or not good enough because we don't use the words that we have in our passive vocabulary. So I want to show you today how you can expand the green circle, how to focus on active vocabulary and expand this one. So my tip is expanding the green circle, not the pink one. And there are some steps that you need to take in order to do that. Number 1, you need to collect those words because you need to identify what are those words that you're always missing that you would like to use in the conversations that you hear a lot in people's conversations or in the videos that you watch or movies. So I want you to have in the notes in your phone, I want you to create a mini file where you put all of the words that you would like to move from your passive to active vocabulary. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but you're gonna start somewhere. And unfortunately, you have to start word by word. So first of all, we collect all of these words. Then A big problem is when you don't know how to pronounce a word, because your brain will automatically decide not to use it. Will try to protect you from, I don't know, humiliation or from just being misunderstood by other people, and will choose an easier option. Okay, so if you don't know how to pronounce the word, you're quite likely not to use it in a conversation because you don't feel confident enough about it. And you need to build muscle memory in order to feel confident using that word. So you need to practice. You need to take a word and practice it many times. Hear it and repeat it 20 times if it's necessary. Okay, you need to get used to saying this word out loud. Then, after you practice saying the word, I want you to see this word used in context. And there's 2 websites that I recommend, and in those you can see the sentences or words used in context. Youglish is the tool that allows you to hear them in context in YouTube videos, while Playphrase allows you to hear them in the movies. So you can use both, or you can use the one that you prefer, that you find more relevant to your situation. And I want you to see them in context, in many different contexts, because in both of these tools, you can see more than one context of this word or sentence, and say them out loud. Then try to create your own examples. Think in what situations could you use this expression, and create your own expressions, and I want you to use them intentionally in a conversation next time that you have an opportunity. Maybe the first time you'll forget, but then you remember, like, that was a perfect situation to use this word. Maybe next time you will manage to do that. I really hope so. Now, learning vocabulary in context. So you might be having the context already if you live in the English-speaking country, or your work could be your context. You could be working with native speakers or non-native speakers who speak English as well. Or you could have English-speaking friends. So you could naturally have those contexts. But if you don't have any of those, you have to make an extra effort in order to create the context. So the way you can create it is by watching TV series, watching TED Talks, YouTube videos, podcasts, basically all of the content, all of the visual content that is available online. We have access to so many fantastic resources. Use them. Another thing is online conversations. Okay, so these are lessons, online classes that you may have with a teacher. This is also forced context, not like natural one, because you are in the classroom, even if it's a virtual classroom, still, this is just like one-to-one context, not a spontaneous situation. It might be like with a lot of drills, but you gotta do what you gotta do. And it's gonna prepare you for the real situations and real context. And finally, articles, podcasts, social media posts, all of this is full of useful language to use in everyday talks. You just need to pay a lot of attention, not just listen to it mindlessly. Pay attention and write down the words that you hear, the ones that you think that are useful, the one that you hear many times. These are the words that we want to focus on. Now, why should you always learn vocabulary in context? It's just simply more effective. And you're more likely to retrieve the word in the future because you created some association with it. And the sillier, the better. Because if you have like a really silly association or a meme or like a funny situation that reminds you of that word, That's even better because you have an emotion that is associated to that word. This will make the association stronger. And that's what we want because it's more likely that you will remember this kind of words. Plus, learning isolated words with no context simply doesn't make any sense. It doesn't do you any favor. It's pointless. But you have to be specific. It's not enough to write your goal, I want to improve my English. This is not very specific. You gotta write down what you actually want to do. Okay, so you have to set specific goals. Reading one article and listening to one podcast per day or per week, whatever works for you. And it depends how much time you have. It's going to be different for everyone. But I would recommend doing something every single day to get into a habit of doing something for your English every single day. And try using monolingual English dictionaries. This way, you will not focus on translation, but you'll focus on the meaning of the word. This is a really good habit to create on an early stage of learning the language. Then again, using English and play phrase, here you can see a little bit of how those tools look like. And learning fixed expressions, learning the language in chunks. Instead of cramming single words, like even worse in a word list of words, like without any context, it's better to use the fixed expressions and the context that we use them in. So I've got some examples of fixed expressions for you. It's up to you. I don't get it. It's on me. I'll get this. It's not a big deal. And after you. So you might know all the words that appear in these expressions. For example, it's up to you. Right? I bet that you know all these words. What about all of these words together? Do you know the meaning of that expression? Same with after you. When would you use that expression? So I want you to do an exercise. I want you to go through these steps that I showed you in order to activate your vocabulary. I want you to hear these words, these expressions. I want you to see them in context using English and play phrase. I want you to think in what context could you use them? And then I want you to use them in the right moment. Try. Why not? Okay, that's your homework. Okay, I didn't tell you that there will be a homework from this webinar, but yeah, that's your homework. Start with these simple expressions, especially with the ones that you don't know. If you know all of these expressions, choose some different ones that you hear today watching a film or in a podcast that you came across today. So change them. But if all of them are new to you, go with these ones. Mind maps. I have to tell you that I love mind maps. I like them because I'm a visual learner and most of us are. And they're useful because you see the words that that relate to the same context. For example, in this one that I'm showing you, it's the work context. It's a great way to make a vocabulary revision before the exam. I suggested those mind maps to my students. I created them for my students to revise the vocabulary before their STANAG 6001 exam. So this is like last minute revision. You can save them on your phone, have them ready to take a look at them just before the day of the exam or just before the exam. So there are some expressions. They don't have to be single nouns. Sometimes a single noun is enough. Sometimes it's the whole expression. Sometimes it's a phrasal verb or an idiom or a collocation. It's up to you. It's also a really good idea to create a mind map when you're doing the writing, when you're planning your writing. So this is the initial stage of the writing. Remember, in the previous webinar, we talked about planning your writing, about different stages. So creating a mind map with the words that you remember related to the topic that you're going to write about is a really good strategy, because it's like a really good moment to think, okay, do I know some good vocabulary related to that topic? And then you can close your eyes and imagine this mind map that you created before related to the topic. And the topics, all of the topics of your writings are going to be related to the Stanek requirements. Okay, so there's a limited amount of topics that appears there, and I covered all of them. I prepared the mind maps for all of them, and I want you to do the same thing. You can either use the ones that I prepared, or you can prepare your own ones, the ones that work for you. If it will help you to remember them better, that's fantastic. And the tool that I use in order to create my mind maps is Canva. This is a website that allows you to create different designs. And this is the tool that I use obsessively. So I highly recommend Canva. It's canva.com, just like this. And here are some other examples of the mind maps that I created for my students. And as you can see, the topics are related to the Stanek exam. It's daily life, education, hobbies and free time, and all of the rest of the topics that are required from students to know for the Stanek exam. Now, idioms versus collocation. So that's like a battle of two aspects of the language. And yeah, a lot of students are really obsessed with learning idioms. And don't get me wrong, idioms are important, and using them will make you sound natural in English. However, there may be 100 idioms, okay, maybe between 100 and 200 idioms that are really worth learning and that are commonly used in the spoken English in the daily conversations. The rest of them are regional idioms, and even speakers from different English-speaking countries would not know them, okay, because they're very culture-specific, region-specific. So I would recommend focusing on the ones that are commonly used. And if you overuse them in a conversation, if you try to drop an idiom in every single sentence that you say, that you will sound really unnatural, because people do not talk like this. So I want to show you some examples of idioms that are wrong, and then I'm going to show you some examples of the idioms that are great to use. So this is probably the first one that students come across when they're learning a language. And I actually don't know why this is the one that is always chosen, like by course book creators, by teachers. Maybe it's because it's funny. Okay, kind of funny for children. It's raining cats and dogs. To be honest, it's really hard to hear this expression in the everyday conversation. People just don't use that. The meaning of that idiom, if you don't know this idiom, is to rain heavily. And what people would say instead would be, it's pouring down rain, or it's pouring. That would be like the most natural thing to say in this situation, not it's raining cats and dogs. And I added some bonus to it, because there is even an expression that says, when it rains, it pours. So it says that when there is like a sequence of bad events, and if there was one bad thing that happened, then there was another bad thing. So like when something bad happens, like bad events come like in a group, they attack you like as a group event. Then my personal story. So when I was 18, I had this end of high school exam in English. And I decided to be smart and outsmart the examiners. And I thought, if I use one conditional and one idiom in my writing, for sure they're gonna give me the highest score, like in vocabulary and grammar. Okay, I just decided that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna use the second conditional and I'm gonna use one idiom in my writing. And I selected this idiom for all the tea in China because for some reason somebody put it in the idiom book, in the one that I had at that point of my life in 2008. And I didn't know how to check if this idiom is actually used. We didn't have the tools that we have today and access to the materials and video content that we have today. So I thought, okay, this is a fantastic idiom to use. It's kind of funny for all the tea in China. It seemed funny to me in 2008. And it means that nothing could persuade you to do a certain thing. Okay, like in a normal conversation, in the normal spoken English, you would say like, there is no way I would do that. Okay, so instead of saying that, I decided to write in my writing, I wouldn't do that for all the tea in China. Yeah. And as you can guess, I did not get the maximum score for my writing at that time. So this was not a good strategy, just selecting one idiom, thinking that I'm gonna fit it like in every possible context, which I tried. It was kind of forced. And you could see that it does not really fit in this context, but I decided, no, this is the idiom that I'm gonna use. This strategy did not work. So I do not recommend following this strategy because it was a bad one. Instead, I recommend learning idioms that you actually hear in the movies, podcasts, in all of the content that you consume in English and in the daily conversation, obviously, if you have an opportunity to hear them in your daily life. Here are some idioms that I've selected that I hear quite a lot, that are commonly used, and I think these are the ones that are worth knowing. Take it with a grain of salt. This means do not take something too seriously. Do not take it to an extreme. Okay, like take my words with a grain of salt. It means that I am not know-it-all, and I'm not an expert in some areas. So when I make a recommendation, take it with a grain of salt. It does not mean that this is the only truth. People use it quite a lot in the YouTube videos when they are expressing their opinions on certain topics, and they do not want to be considered experts in those areas. Another one is, it's not rocket science. And it means that it's not something really difficult, okay? It's actually quite easy. How do we know that an idiom is actually used? As I mentioned before, paying attention to all of the authentic content that we consume in English. I forgot to mention before that vlogs are a great way, video blogs are a great way to hear the real language, because when people are just grabbing their phone or camera and talking about what they're doing every single day, this is something very natural. This is their natural way of expressing. This is not what they memorized to say in a YouTube video. This is something spontaneous. So I would say that vlogs are also a great resource that you could use. Yeah, let's move on to the next part. Oh no, there's still. I forgot that I want to tell you about collocations and why I love collocations, why I focus a lot in my teaching on teaching collocations. Because I consider them to be way more important than idioms. Idioms are like a cherry on a cake. Okay, but first you need to create this cake. The cake will be the base. All of the vocabulary, grammar, collocations, this will be your cake. And if you know some idioms, great. Add them but as a cherry on a cake, okay? On top of all of the knowledge that you have. Do not start learning English from idioms, okay? This should be like the thing that will come later, plus the idioms that are actually commonly used. Not the weird ones, not the uncommon ones, not the regional ones. Now, collocations are combinations of words that appear together relatively often in a particular language. And using them will make you sound natural. I work a lot with Spanish students, and there is a term for when you speak English, but you're basically translating Spanish expressions into English. It's called Spanglish. And if you don't want to speak Spanglish or whatever it's called in your native language, like Polish in Polish, not sure if that's the word. I'm not sure if Polish people, if we have the word for that. If we do, let me know. I want to know what is the word. I just know the word Spanglish, and that this is what happens when you think in Spanish and when you just translate the sentences without thinking what is a natural way to say that in English. So I want to give you some examples of what collocations are. To pay someone a visit. This means to visit someone. Okay, you can say to pay someone a visit. You're not paying for anything. Okay, it means to come over to visit someone in their house. To make a decision, to have a party. Okay, not to make a party or to do a party. No, to have a party or to throw a party or to host a party, but not to make and not to do a party. To take a seat. Then it's not just a verb and a noun. It could be a noun and an adjective. Heavy rain, not strong, heavy. Heavy rain. Highly successful. This could be also with adverbs and adjectives. If you want to intensify the adverb, what most of the people do, they just add very before every single adjective. Very, very good, very nice, very successful, very, very everything. But actually, there are some adverbs that collocate with certain adjectives. Highly successful, highly unlikely. We've got deeply concerned too, instead of saying very worried. Okay. Then, finally, learn language chunks. I already mentioned that before. So instead of focusing on single words, you focus on these sections in the language, on phrases, on expressions, not single words. And last but not least, for my military students, for my soldiers, and everybody who is watching. So if you're not in the army, maybe the last part is not going to be interesting for you, but watch anyway. Why not? You can always learn something new. So when I teach military vocabulary, I focus on 3 aspects. 1, profession-specific vocabulary. So this is all of the vocabulary that is going to be useful in the soldier profession. It covers a wide range of vocabulary. The first thing that comes to my mind is the word military or military. Okay, so this word is very often used as a name for the profession, while you cannot say that you are a military. This is a common thing that Spanish soldiers say, as in Spanish the word is militar. So you cannot say that you are military. Okay, so if you are going to live with one thing, like after this webinar, like I want you to remember this, that you can say that I'm a service member, I'm the member of the armed forces, I'm a soldier, but not I am a military. Military refers to the army. You can say, I'm in the military. Okay, I'm in the army, but not I am a military. But anyways, this is one of the aspects that I teach: profession-specific vocabulary, the most important phrasal verb for soldiers, which is watch out. Okay, it means be careful. Okay, you need to know the meaning of that phrasal verb because it may save your life. Okay, some of this vocabulary may save your life, so it's crucial. Then, technical vocabulary. So different parts of weapons, tanks, and you name it. And functional language. Functional language are some of the expressions that we use in certain situations, modes to address your superiors, subordinates, military alphabet, and many other aspects of how to behave in certain situations, how to react to what people say, and how to ask certain questions, how to apologize, how to ask direct questions, how to say so that you're sorry, and all the range of expressions that are covered in functional language. I'm gonna show you some examples of my workbook. This is the one in green. We've got some functional language, such as describing a military organization, talking about different units and who commands them, and also the vocabulary, phrasal verbs, and collocations related to military career. And on the left, you can see the parts of the gun. This is also one of the part of the technical vocabulary. So we've got technical vocabulary, profession-specific vocabulary, and functional language, the three aspects that I consider to be really important in the military language course. And that's all for today. Thank you very much for being here. And if you have any further questions, or if you would like to ask me anything, you know where to find me. Find me on my social media, drop me a line. I'll be eager to answer all your questions and doubts. And I will see you soon in my next webinar. Thanks a lot. I wish you a lovely rest of the week and take care. Stay safe. Bye.